welcome. Thanks for being here. We're excited to have you guys here in person, and today we're also virtual and have some online participants. So welcome to today's MnSTAC forum put on by the Minnesota Shade Tree Advisory Committee. My name is Mark Cruz. I'm a project specialist with the Urban and Community Forestry team at the DNR. I'm also a member of the MnSTAC Education and Forum Subcommittee, and get to be your monitor and kind of host for today. So today we have Brian Schwingle, who's the Forest Health Program Coordinator for the DNR's Division of Forestry. Today he's going to present on, give a DNR Forest Health update with a bit of a focus on ornamentals. So Brian will discuss what the DNR Forest Health Program has seen or heard for tree health thus so far this year. And the focus mainly will be on ornamental trees. Topics he'll touch on will be maple petiole borer, bur oak dieback, aspen dieback, white pine needle disease, sawfly feeding on hard pines, spruce top kill, and likely some other topics as well. If you have any questions, feel free to jot anything down. We'll have a Q&A session after Brian's talk. And for anybody joining us online, feel free to add any of your questions in the chat, and we'll address those at the end of the talk as well. Also, this talk will be eligible for an ISA CEU. We'll share that link at the end of the chat. And without further ado, here's Brian.
Thanks, Mark. Whoops. Very happy to be here. Thanks for the invite, MnSTAC forum. So I gave that list of topics like a week or two ago, and I decided that I have too much stuff, so I'm not going to talk about some stuff that I said I was going to talk about, and I added other stuff. But so I took out the spruce top kill topic, but I'm kind of obsessed with this one. I think there are places in the Twin Cities where maybe 5% of the spruce have dead tops. And it's funny because when I was making this talk this past week, I was like, maybe I'm not seeing it as much anymore. So I took it out. And of course, like yesterday, I forget what part of the Twin Cities I was in, and I was like, holy cow, there's active top kill happening right now on that spruce and that one over there. So I'm the team coordinator, the regional specialist for the Minnesota DNR, the regional forest health specialist. He's actually got a sample from city of Minnetonka of spruce with a dead top, and there was nothing conclusive from that. He did find like a boring moth, signs of a boring moth in there, but this has been happening for 3, 4, 5 years. No one's reported it to us. No one's flagged it. So I guess no one cares about spruce. But anyways, it's happening. I'm fascinated by it. And maybe we'll get an answer about what's actually causing it in the future. But once you start thinking about it, you might not be able to stop noticing it. That's all I'll say. Okay, so I'm going to talk a lot about the weather today. Huge kudos go to the Minnesota DNR climate team. They have an amazing set of resources available to anyone, and I take a lot from those resources. So these graphs come from the Minnesota Climate Explorer, and all these weather events that I'm going to talk about right now are related to tree health that we're seeing right now, or that's being reported to us. So the first thing is spring 2024 was very wet. In fact, it was the wettest May through June on record for the state as a whole. When you break the state down into various climate zones, it was near record for every single one of them. And then, if you remember, last fall, September, October were horrendously dry. Third driest for the state. Okay. And then, of course, last winter, if you were a cross-country skier, it wasn't the worst if you're willing to ski on artificial snow or lake ice, but it was really bad. And you can see this is a series from basically early December through mid-March. If you see brown or light brown colors, that means there's 0 to 1 inches of snow cover. or 0 to 2 inches of snow cover. The dark brown is 0 to 1, light brown 1 to 2. So you can see for almost the entire winter, there was essentially no snow cover. All right. And of course, what's interesting though is the temperatures were about normal for when you compare them to the 1991 to 2020 30-year normal period, they were about normal. And frost was deeper than the median. Surprise, surprise. But it thawed 2 weeks earlier than the median. All right, and then this is the final weather stat. The earliest 75-degree day occurred this year in March 14. Some areas in Minnesota exceeded 75 degrees, but that was the earliest Minnesota saw 75 degrees. So that was a one-day event. But then when you take a look at March as a whole, it was a very warm March in the top 20 for the entire state. When you break the state down into various climate components, it was perhaps in the southwest part of the state, it was the warmest March on record. This map shows basically the darker the colors, the warmer the March was in comparison to what's considered normal. So you can see the northeastern part of the state wasn't horrendously warm for March, but the southwest central, east central part was very warm. Okay, now I'm going to touch back on every single one of those and try and connect them to tree health that we're seeing. So back to the actually wet spring 1 year ago. Now I'm still going to talk about a year ago because we saw a tremendous amount of fungal leaf diseases last year because of the extremely wet May and June last year. So when leaves are emerging from deciduous trees, they're susceptible to infection by fungal leaf diseases. Those fungal leaf diseases do very, very well when you have high humidity and lots of rain. And so apple scab is pictured on the right. It was really bad last year. We had a tremendous amount of reports of anthracnose, which you can see on the left of maples last year, maple anthracnose, ash anthracnose, oak anthracnose last year in June. Marsanina leaf blight on aspens throughout the entire state was remarkable. The picture actually on the left there is what a lot of quaking aspens look like in mid-August in Eagan, just southeast suburb in the metro area. Picture on the right, balsam poplar also sustained a lot of leaf disease. It wasn't just caused by one pathogen in some cases, but that's essentially trivial. But our team estimated by mid-August, probably 10 to 20% of aspens in the state had already been defoliated. So fall colors in terms of aspens last year wasn't brilliant. And then Tubackia, a Tubackia species was pretty common on oaks. Here's a white oak, again, in Eagan. The plant disease clinic at the University of Minnesota saw an uptick in Tubackia leaf disease too last year. So that was last year. Fast forward to this year, it was drier. It was much drier in May. And right now, up to the 25th of June, it's drier than last year too. Here's a picture of a crabapple. That's what the leaves looked like a week ago. And a week ago, a year ago, crabapples had heavy apple scab already. So less leaf disease, yay. Okay. Now, this is still related to last year, but I'm talking about this year, Septorioides needle blight on white pine. Here's where we're getting sightings and reports of this in northeastern Minnesota. This is what it looks like. Basically, if your white pine looks really yellow right now, there's a decent chance that it might have Septorioides needle blight. In 2023, my teammate up north, Eric Otto, recorded quite a bit of Septorioides needle blight in northeastern Minnesota last year. Not much at all. It was there, but not much. This year, he has a funny way of stating things. Septorioides is evident sporadically on white pine in northeastern Minnesota, and I just got a report from an arborist this morning out of Duluth showing a case of Septorioides needle blight. So Septorioides needle blight, it's one, like if you Google white pine needle disease, the sky is falling, but that's out east, capital E, east. It's white pine needle disease out east typically is caused by one of 4 fungal pathogens or a combination of them. But again, like starting in 2019, we started getting reports of Septorioides from some samples that we've submitted from up north. Actually, at the Landscape Arboretum too, they've gotten some report confirmations of some of these pathogens, Duke's needle blight pathogen. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes in Minnesota. What to look for though is basically in April through June, if you have just a yellowing of last year's needles, or sometimes needle tip burn or blight, there's a good chance that it's one of these 4 needle pathogens that's causing this. The only way to confirm it really to have confidence is to submit a sample to a disease clinic. Lots of those needles will drop in June. Of course, just like with all fungal needle diseases or leaf disease is most severe in the lower canopy. And out east, they're reporting dieback in the lower crown. You know, each one of these pathogens produces slightly different looking fruiting bodies, but here are the fruiting bodies of Septorioides. So what we're seeing, and this has been confirmed out east too, and it's in the literature, is that if you have a wet May through July, that can promote a lot of needle blight the following year, because that's when infection occurs. Symptoms typically show the following, like April, May. Then you have the needle drop in June. So the situation out east is different. I mean, they have a tremendous they have way more white pine than we do here in this state. Yet it is interesting and slightly concerning that we're seeing this. I got to put a personal plug in here, although it's reflective of a lot of other people with a forestry background. White pine is extremely flexible species. When I think about like its durability relative to jack or red pine or any of the non-native pines, it's robust. I think it's gotten a kind of a bad rap because it's heavily studied. And so, you know, with white pine blister rust and all the scare with white pine blister rust way back in the day, I think white pine kind of got a bad rap, but it's an extremely flexible species in terms of what kind of sites it can grow on. So that's just my personal plug for it. Okay, now let's talk about last autumn, September, October, how dry it was and the impact that it is having or could be having on tree health. So we've been having a lot of aspen and oak decline, and I'm going to get into that. It certainly could be contributing to that if we continue to see that this year. It may have contributed to winter desiccation, winter burn that was documented in a couple spots this spring. And it may have contributed to a smattering of reports we've heard of young trees or trees that were planted last year that now are dead. But again, we can't rule out a couple other weather events like the snowless winter and that extreme warm period in March. But on to oak decline. So oak decline, we saw a definite uptick in our aerial survey and in our field work in 2022. It was no mystery. That was because of the 2020-21 extreme drought. High levels persisted in 2023. Again, probably because of the 2021 drought, but also because of the nearly equally bad 2023 drought. Here's a shot in the metro of this oak. It started showing heavy dieback symptoms in 2023. It basically looks like this today too. There was a slight decline in health between 2024 and 2025, but it basically looks like that today. We didn't document any widespread additional decline in 2024 in our aerial survey. In fact, less. which kind of surprised me because of the preceding year, the really bad drought in 2023. But I have no idea what's going to happen on the landscape in 2025. I'm nervous because of that really bad drought. We have gotten a few reports in these locations in Minnesota already of kind of sudden dieback this spring of oaks. I've actually seen some in South Metro, just a few cases that I've personally seen, but we've gotten reports from the Metro too. And then up in Crow Wing, Cass County, Central Minnesota, and then Clearwater in Northwestern Minnesota. Here are just some examples though. So this is actually a coworker reported this situation in the Southwest Metro where she looked at her oak last week and was like, oh my gosh, it looks like this. And it didn't look like that last fall. So I actually took a look at what the tree looked like if on Google Street View. Google Street View is kind of an incredible tool to check out what things looked like, you know, a few years ago. And I noticed in Google Street View in 2023, there was some subtle dieback on that tree, but it obviously drastically worsened between spring 2023 and spring 2025. So not good. There have been several trees that I've been following up in Mora, Minnesota, in Kennebec County, north of the Twin Cities, about an hour and a half. Here's 2023, spring 2023. The leaves were still emerging, so the crown looks thin, but it's just because it's standard spring leaf phenology. And then fast forward to this year, and there wasn't much difference. There was some additional dieback that developed between spring 2023 and spring 2025. So slightly concerning. It's not getting better. And the same can go for this tree again in Mora. Here's what it looked like in 2023. There's some dieback there. And then in 2025, it's like, okay, there's noticeable dieback increase. So that's what I'm seeing in central Minnesota. On to trembling aspen. So trembling aspen dieback was first noted by my teammate Rachel Rachel Doobie in central Minnesota. And this year it's looking worse. So here's where folks are reporting kind of scattered dieback, typically 10 to 20% dieback, but up to 50% dieback. That's kind of looking new this spring. People are seeing this in communities. And there's a lot of likely, now this is, I've been waiting. I've just been waiting for this to be seen because really of the 2021 drought and because of history. But here are all these things that could certainly be contributing to dieback. There's a lot. There's obviously the 2021 drought, 2023 drought. They were very severe in the growing season. 2022, there was a massive seed crop all over, really all in like north of the Twin Cities, all over the state. Tremendous amount of seeds produced by quaking aspens. That actually also happened after the bad drought of 1989. So is related almost without doubt to the 2021 drought. Last year, in March, some aspens were leafing out, and that was because likely 2023, 2024 winter was the warmest on record by far, all over the state. So aspens started leafing out in March, and of course there was a frost that kicked some of their butts. I mentioned already the 2024 very heavy leaf disease because of our last year's wet spring. And then there's the drought last fall. So I'm expecting this. My teammate August was actually just up in Pine County, kind of east of Hinckley yesterday, and saw a bunch of flagging mature birch, probably bronze birch borer symptoms already. So none of this is surprising. Fun fact, last time there was a huge region-wide episode of aspen decline was 2008, 2009 were the peak. We saw a tremendous amount in northern Minnesota and northern Wisconsin. That was because of 3-4 years of very heavy forest ant caterpillar defoliation, followed by 2 very, very severe droughts. So not the same situation as we're sitting in today, but the droughts are what's consistent. So time will tell if we see massive amounts of decline. We haven't yet. All right, now on to this winter, the snowless for the southern, like what, half of Minnesota, basically a snowless winter. It might be a contributing factor to these things. The aborted leaf out and death of relatively young trees. There's sounds like many trees in Minneapolis, many catalpas that look like this picture here. I haven't seen that, nor have my teammates elsewhere in the state or even the metro on catalpas. Catalpas look great, but for some reason in Minneapolis, some of the younger ones look like this.
Also Robbinsdale.
Robbinsdale, yes, Robbinsdale. Okay, yeah, who knows? I mean, there's so many different factors that could be contributing, you know, the nasty drought, the snowless winter and the deep frost. Perhaps I'm curious where the seed zone from this specific cultivar came from. Maybe it's like particularly a southern seed zone and is just not cold hardy. I have no idea. Maybe armillaria is killing some of these trees. We have gotten a smattering of maple dieback reports though from southeastern Minnesota, which has me a little scared, and I'll explain why in a second. But again, we can't rule out that very dry fall last year. Now, back to this maple topic I just mentioned. So the last time we had a snowless winter that had cold temperatures was the 2018-2019 winter, okay? It actually had more snow than this past winter, particularly starting in mid-February, but it was very snowless in December and January in 2018-2019. Temperatures that winter actually throughout most of Minnesota, all the way down to the Iowa border, hit below -30. So it was colder that winter. Deeper frost, but it was still, you know, this year we still had deeper frost than the median. Of course, the big difference here is there was a very late thaw back then. We had a very early thaw 2 weeks before the median this year. The preceding fall back then was very wet, in great contrast to our preceding fall. So they're different. But what happened in 2018-2019 was in May and June and July, we got a lot of reports of maples, younger maples, that just died back, heavily died back in some instances. In my neighborhood, in the Southeast Metro, there are still kind of staghorn situations on like Norway maples that are because of that winter. Well, let me say, my theory is this winter caused these symptoms. I don't know. I never actually looked at any samples. I just received a lot of reports from a wide area of Minnesota. So I'm kind of piecing this together and looking at the weather, but I'm not sure. We are not seeing that this year. We're not seeing this yet, but time will tell, I think. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for not. Okay, on to the warm March. Right after that very warm spell in mid-March, March 14, 15, we had winter desiccation reports from Isanti County and then Otter Tail County. Not surprising. There was still frost in the ground. When you have extremely warm early springs and there's still frost in the ground, you get winter desiccation on conifers. Not many reports of this. There was 2018, there was a major winter desiccation event that affected like all of southeastern, east central Minnesota, northwestern Wisconsin. We experienced nothing like that this year, but it did. We saw a little bit of it, white pine and spruce. Now, here's Brian's hypothetical bandwagon right now. I invite you on, but this is the most interesting story that I have to tell you. It comes from my mom's yard. I was at my parents' and I saw their sugar maple in their front yard in mid-May or early May. And it's like, oh boy, the whole southwestern side of the crown is going to die. It looks like the leaves. And they're in ag country. And this was right around soybean planting time. And I was like, this is probably herbicide damage. But there's no other herbicide damage on any other plant. And some of their plants are more sensitive to herbicides than sugar maple. So I was like, boy, is this anthracnose? Maybe. And then that's in southwestern Wisconsin. So I'm driving up to the Twin Cities, going through, I see another case just like that, a little north of their property. Then I hit an area that might have been in the southeastern corner of Minnesota. Same thing, southwestern side of the crown just toasted. But also lower canopy leaf loss. And then a week later, I'm in the Twin Cities and I'm waiting in the shade under a sugar maple. And I look up and I see the exact same leaf symptoms, but not nearly as severe. It was like, oh, this is widespread identical symptoms. It must be anthracnose. I contact my Wisconsin DNR counterparts. I'm like, what are you seeing? They're seeing the same things. So then I started taking a look at the weather. And I do wonder how early leaves emerged because of the very warm March. I was taking a look at, I forget the website, the American Phenological Network or something. I was taking a look at maple leaf emergence records in Wisconsin, Minnesota, trying to figure out if the leaves were emerged really like in March, which would be very early. I'm not sure. But I do know that individual trees can vary, like sugar maples can vary when they're leafing out by 2 to 3 weeks. It's looking like for what I judge as reliable records. Now, without question, there was pretty severe frost in mid-April all throughout southeastern Minnesota, followed by a lot of rain. So what's interesting is, I just confirmed this morning, is that the two needle pathogens that are most frequently associated with maple leaf anthracnose, they can be endophytes, latent pathogens that don't cause disease until there's damaged tissue. So this is my theory. Again, possibly, now I'd be very curious if anybody has a visual record that could send me a picture of if sugar maples possibly in unusually warm springs, if they would actually leaf out earlier, slightly earlier on their southwest facing crown, that would kind of be, for me, the nail in the coffin. That could confirm, okay, we're seeing a combination here of early leaf out, frost damage, and anthracnose. But I just don't know if that can actually happen on individual tree crowns. Very curious if it can. Other than that, I really can't explain the southwest facing higher disease severity. Every single one of these severe cases was a wide open, the sugar maple was grown in the wide open. It wasn't sheltered in any way. So that's my most interesting story of, we're talking a handful. I've seen a couple in 3 in southwestern Wisconsin, although more reports from Wisconsin DNR. I've seen a couple cases in southeastern Minnesota, severe. That's it. Okay, that's done. I'm done with the weather. How are we doing on time here? Oh boy. I don't have much more, I don't think. Okay, so I've gotten a couple reports of very heavy seed crops on silver maple and red maple. Duluth country, very heavy seed crops on silver maple. Brainerd country, some scattered red maples with very heavy seed crops. Here are the shots from Duluth, and you can see it's like these crowns look sickly, and I can imagine some residents are worried about their silver maples. You know, this happens occasionally. The last time I believe we got a tremendous amount, a huge seed crop on silver maple, don't quote me, I believe it was 2015. It was a huge part of the state. It can result in trees that look like this for a season. It can result in dieback, subtle dieback. I'm not worried about it. But just so you know, that those are reports that were gained. This is also very fun. Maple petiole borer. There's been an area in central Minnesota that has a few sugar maples with maple petiole borer. You get rapid leaf loss. Also several reports coming out of Wisconsin. And when you take a look at the leaves that fall, their entire petiole doesn't fall, just part of their petiole falls. And the part of the petiole that sticks up in the canopy, that has the causal agent in it. So maple petiole borer, it's a sawfly. It's not a caterpillar, it's a sawfly. It's obviously teeny tiny. If it can bore out the petiole of a sugar maple, like you can see on the picture there on the right, that larvae, it stays in the petiole attached to the tree. Eventually that petiole will fall off, and then the sawfly pops out and overwinters in the soil. So don't waste your time raking. That's all I gotta say about that. This isn't a concern for tree health. Well, obviously it is a concern for tree health. The tree is gonna probably re-leaf, expend energy to do so. I've never heard of maple petiole borer undergoing long outbreaks or killing trees. European pine sawfly, munching on hardwood, on hard pines. Hey, we see this. I've seen this scattered years going up to, up to Moose Lake, here and there and everywhere on red pine, jack pine. Last year, my teammate August got a lot of reports from homeowners on Scots pines, Austrian pines, red pines, kind of west central Minnesota on this map. You can see where he got these reports. Thus far, the reports are down, and it's highly likely that the population has gone down this year because they're done with their feeding life cycle for the year. But if you've never seen these critters, they feed on 2 and 3 needle pines primarily, and fortunately, they only feed on the old needles. So it's not like they're tree killers. If you delve into the world of coniferous sawflies, there are a lot of sawflies that can feed on our conifers, and they look a lot alike. There's actually a native sawfly that looks a lot like the European pine sawfly, but when it feeds, it leaves like a 1/4-inch stub of needle on the older needles. Whereas you can see here, the European pine sawfly will feed right down to that fascicle. Kind of a trivial difference, but that is the difference. I have a little mugo pine that I adore in my front yard, and it's been crushed by these damn sawflies for the last 3, 4, 5 years. I hate them. And I've tried insecticidal oil. I've gone out, I've scouted early, and you can see this is a mugo pine. Those needles are short. When these critters are young, they're tiny, very difficult to see. They blend right in with the foliage. So I recommend getting out there early May, looking hard actually for brown needles. This is before shoot elongation. Look for brown needles. If you see brown thin needles, it's a very good indicator that you have young sawfly there and that are too small to actually eat the whole needle. So they eat kind of like the outer edge around the core of the needle. Look for them. I don't know if I've tried insecticidal soap on them. I haven't tried any kind of harder core insecticide that wouldn't be nice to natural enemies. But this is a little adorable little mugo. I've just resorted to squishing them. I find great joy in squishing them with my fingers. They smell delightful, like crushed up pine needle. Like they smell really good. And when they get a little fatter, I might put on some gloves to do so. But the 99% of people would not recognize any damage at all on my mugos because I get out there for a week every night and squish those expletives. Okay, so this is kind of a public service announcement. And this probably isn't really relevant anymore to folks in the metro area or anywhere where emerald ash borer has really done a tremendous amount of damage. This is really a message for folks kind of in central and northern Minnesota. Watch out for cottony ash psyllid. If you don't know about cottony ash psyllid, it's kind of a fascinating issue. It's a growing issue in northern Wisconsin, as you can see. I've seen it once on an ornamental black ash in Cannon Falls, Minnesota. And it's like, I think I was with the city forester or something, and we were driving to various sites, and I did this triple take on this black ash. And it's like, wow, that person just crushed their black ash with turf herbicide, because that's what it looked like exactly. But I looked long and hard and really close, and it's like, no, there's an insect on here, very tiny insect, and the leaves were all sticky with honeydew. Cottony ash psyllid has been reported as a problem in Winnipeg, in Calgary. It's been reported out of the Dakotas, out of Saskatoon. So it's an issue. It's non-native. It can thin the crowns, and it looks like herbicide damage. If you take a close look at this picture, you'll see some herbicide damage. What looks like herbicide damage. And it produces this white cottony stuff. So here's the team. Hold on, I'm going to take a drink quick. Trying to fight a cough off. So here's the team of forest health specialists and our aerial survey gentry. These folks are out on the ground making lots of observations, getting lots of reports from everyone, and they're the reason why I'm able to give this talk to you all today. And yeah, that's all. I'll take questions.
I just got a couple of comments from online, if that's all right. Oh,
Sure.
One of them was if, Brian, you would be willing to show the Wisconsin psyllid map again.
You bet.
And then along with that topic, is it only an issue on black ash and not green and white?
Oh, I'm glad they asked that. That's a good question. Yes, it's only an issue on black ash. Hopefully you can see this. Hopefully I'm sharing. But here's where they're spotting it in northern Wisconsin. And this is a difficult situation because this is an area of northern Wisconsin where emerald ash borer is relatively new. So they're looking for it, you know, trying to track where it's going, and this is complicating that effort, because when they're looking at heavily impacted black ash by cottony ash psyllid, it's like, oh, there's EAB. It's like, oh, no, that's not EAB, it's cottony ash psyllid.
Thanks. If anybody in the room has questions, it would be nice if we could just pass the Bluetooth mic around so folks online can hear.
Nobody? Sounds good. Any other online?
Whoa.
Ryan
Schwingle here.
It's okay. I don't feel bad.
Have you looked at any, there were a couple other people coming in with the Catalpa observation.
Yeah.
Catalpa observation from Rochester, Maple Grove, Plymouth, and Apple Valley, potentially. And I'm not sure if anybody had noted the armillaria on any of those.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting. So it's pretty widespread, which suggests that it's related to the weather. You know, whenever you get an identical symptoms on multiple species, of course, multiple species, then you can almost be assured that it's because of the weather. Now, this sounds like it's just one species thus far, although I have heard reports of, like, you know, oaks that were planted last year that in urban environments that didn't leaf out, or that tried to leaf out and then died. I've gotten one report from the metro of Norway maples leafing out just barely and then dying. So those are similar symptoms to what is being reported on these younger catalpas. So, you know, if they're related, then it's likely due to weather or a combination of weather events. But whenever a tree is dying, showing stunted leaves, the first thing I recommend doing is looking for armillary root disease. Now, armillary root disease, of course, it's cosmopolitan. And really, I think of it almost like just a symptom of abiotic damage, weather damage.
I can add to the context of some of. Hi, I can add to some of the context of some of the what we've seen, at least in Minneapolis, with. And when you showed, I think it was you were talking about the heavy seed crop. I went, oh, I hadn't pieced that with what but we haven't lost, and well, I haven't noticed the newest planted catalpas not doing well. Like recently planted, past 2-3 years, no problem. So, you know, thinking of cold hardiness, it's like, well, wouldn't you think they would be more susceptible than a more established tree? I don't, you know, as we've been thinking about it, it's the ones that took the hardest hit have been 9 years, you know, 8 years, like clearly established trees that have been through a pruning cycle. And now that you brought up, you know, we had 2 years of heavy drought, you know, across this area, then a lot of rain, really great moisture through the growing season. You know, fall was bad last year, as you pointed out too. But last year we saw a lot of heavy seed crop on a lot of catalpas, and then this spring, seeing many of them not leaf out. Very few of the many that haven't leafed, and we're talking hundreds across Minneapolis that haven't leafed out. There are few that we've kept an eye on that are sort of pushing out some leaves now. In some, like it's half their canopy, but some it's spread through the canopy, so that they may have more of a chance to come back. But yeah, it's been sort of a head scratcher. You'd expect, if it's that, yeah, why not across multiple species? Some of our tree inspectors have reported coffee trees showing similar symptoms, but not as extensive as this catalpa crop. You know, I saw black alder also just like gone. No, didn't leave out this year. We've been discussing it around the office, chatting with Craig Pinkall about it yesterday, I think, and we're really kind of looking. It seems like root loss is what, or root damage. You know, maybe from the cold, you know, no frost, you know, drought followed by a low, you know, frost getting deep and not having moisture or snow to cover. That it's looking like frost damage, and then of course. And I had one I was out looking at that, then at pruning cuts had some white fungus on it, which I have some pictures of, but we were kind of determining. I think that's noise. Like, I don't think that's related. We're not seeing that all over the place. Like, I think that's just something else going on there. But yeah, that's my story.
Interesting, very interesting.
I could share the same thing, but on a much smaller scale. And Robbinsdale, we're I can share the same observations in Robbinsdale, but just on a much smaller level, where these are like 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old catalpas that otherwise established, grew fast. You'd think that they would have survived any kind of cold winter hardiness issues that would have been thrown its way already, and then all of a sudden here they are just dying, just not leafing out. I've cut down a few myself, and it's like, what went wrong? I don't see any sign of armillaria or any other kind of biotic issues going on. So I would concur that it's maybe something with the alternating wet, dry, deep frost without a snow cover. That'd be my guess. Just anyway.
Yeah, it's disturbing for sure. Personally, I love catalpa, but I did ask my counterparts to the east, hey, are you getting reports of this from any of your communities? And they said no, but I'll keep pestering them. It's, you know, the more reports that we get, it really helps piece these puzzles together, if the same exact thing is happening in Rochester to the same sort of cohort of catalpa, it's definitely something we want to know about and investigate.
It's interesting on some parts, you've got one right next to each other. They seemingly were planted the same year, likely from the same nursery. One's gone, one didn't leaf out, and one's looking pretty well. We did see tip dieback even on smaller ones this year. But it's hidden. You don't notice the tip dieback because they leafed out so well, and they're covering it up pretty quickly with vigorous growth. I don't know if that's.
Gonna jump back online if that's all right. Just a comment from Vanessa over in St. Louis Park. We're seeing dead newly planted honey locust, coffee tree, and oak.
That was St. Louis Park, you said?
St. Louis Park.
Yeah.
Comment from Louise up in Duluth. Has anyone else in areas besides Duluth noticed the silver maple heavy seed crop and very light leaf presence? Getting a couple nods in the room.
No nods in the room, right? No one's seen that?
Oh, no.
I have, and down in Winona, I feel like it seems to be a heavier seed year, or at least the silver maple over my garden covered my garden.
Yeah.
But yeah, it felt heavier than I've seen, and that was on a boulevard tree. And I feel like I'd seen that more prolifically around the city, but I guess I hadn't noticed, at least compared to the pictures you shared as far as the thinning, I haven't seen quite that level of thinning.
Cameron says, ironically, today I saw a stand of young box elder with a lot of browning leaves, possibly blight of some sort.
Oh man, I was going to talk about box elder too today, but I took that out. The only thing I have to say about box elder is that last year in southeastern Minnesota, there was a outbreak of box elder leaf roller that completely defoliated whole stands of box elders. I don't know about in any communities, but this year the box elders are fine. So I do wonder if Cameron is possibly seeing that.
Got a couple more. Like somebody on a Hennepin County iPhone says Kentucky coffee tree too. It seems to me same age class as the catalpas. Question: what do we think are priority climate impacts to plan for in the northern forests?
I don't know. I'm on a. We know it's going to get warmer. It's getting warmer. When you take a look at like the models for precipitation, there's low confidence in those models about whether overall annual precipitation is going to increase or decrease. The trend has been slight increase in annual precipitation, but what seems like there's more confidence in is that the quantity of rainfall in any individual event is increasing. I mean, it is increasing, and the periods between those rainfall events are decreasing. So it's kind of like a catch-22, because you want to be prepared for flooding. You also you definitely want to be prepared for droughts. So, I think that this is this is outside of my area of expertise, but what I don't recommend people doing is freaking out and being like, we need to plant sycamores in Duluth, or we need to put red buds in International Falls. I don't think that's a wise move, because you still have to deal with the climate of today, and I mean, it's hitting -30 a lot in a large part of northern Minnesota every year. So you have to be smart, and you have to. I think though that Carrie Pike with the US Forest Service. She's a tree geneticist. She contributes to a publication called Hardwood Planter Notes or something like that. And they're developing these general guidance for how far you can move seed safely. And it's roughly, what's convenient is that for our native species, it's looking like if you go down south 200 miles to collect seed and plant those in your location, that's pretty safe. It's a safe bet. You're hedging your bets for resiliency today and future resiliency. So sorry, I went on too long. I don't have a great answer for it. You know, plant tough trees. How about that?
So another comment about red buds also died in Minneapolis and the metro area. Some leafed out and then died.
Well, that's interesting because I know after that 2018, 2019 weather or winter, there were a lot of red buds that died. I know. So I was kind of waiting to see how they fared this spring. Interesting.
Cameron says maybe take a couple pictures and send it your way.
Sure.
Sorry, Brian, I just had a question about the best way for anybody to be like reporting any issues they see to you, if should they be going through like city arborists, there's city foresters, and then what's kind of the avenue for bringing issues or concerns to your team's attention?
I think ideally it's kind of like a trickle up approach. You know, we're less than half the size of like Wisconsin DNRs and Michigan DNR's forest health teams, less than half. And we get swamped, just like all of you, we get swamped with reports. So ideally, like, you know, homeowners in communities, they'd report up to the person in their community who's in charge of trees. And if like tree inspectors are starting to see a pattern, if they maybe hear that the next community over is having the same same problem, then I recommend shooting an email with pictures, locations to the regional forest health specialist. Also, you know, when you submit samples to the plant disease clinic, I communicate with them on a regular basis, learning what kind of samples they're getting. So that's another really good route to get things reported. And then of course, if it's like a non-native tree killer, the thing to do is to report observations through like the EDD Maps app or Minnesota Department of Ag's report a pest form online. You know, so for example, cottony ash psyllid, non-native, I recommend reporting that through EDD Maps. Yep. But we want to know about big issues, landscape, big issues, you know, if it's affecting a whole township, if it, you know, in a community or half a township, if it's affecting out in the woods, if it's affecting over 100 acres, that's the kind of report that we want. Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. Any other questions online? Don't think so. Well, thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you.
Your updates are always one of my favorite things every year. I'd say, I think it gives me that reminder to just like be observant. Everybody go out, talk to people about what you see. It's really great stuff.
Thanks.
So yeah, thanks everyone for being here, for joining online, for being here in person today. This is the ISA CEUs QR code. Please scan that, get your CEUs. Sonia will also online add the link for the MnSTAC. If you haven't subscribed to their member or haven't subscribed to their newsletter, I really recommend it. There's a lot of great information that comes out every week from them. And then we'll continue these forums. Our next one will be in July at a to be determined date about a to be determined topic, as far as I know. But we'll always be looking to give you guys more information as much as we can. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.